A bruised hand slapped down on a gravel lot. A second hand followed it, smaller, shaking, with a thin gold band on the ring finger. Then a knee hit the stones. Then another. A pregnant woman dragged herself forward through the dust on her hands and her knees. Blood ran from the corner of her mouth and dripped onto the front of a torn yellow sundress. One eye was swelling shut. She did not cry. She did not speak. She just kept crawling. She crawled toward a long row of black motorcycles lined up outside a roadside diner. She crawled toward a heavyset man eating a plate of eggs on the patio. He had a gray beard, scarred knuckles, and a patch on his vest that nobody in that little town said out loud. She stopped a foot from his boot. She lifted her face. Her name was Marable. She was 24 years old. And what those men did next is the part nobody believed. Stay with me on this one. The town sat at a bend in a two-lane highway in the Nevada high desert. One diner, one gas station, one sheriff's office with two cruisers parked nose to nose in front of it. The sign at the edge of town said the population was 417. Most of those 417 never came out after dark. The rest worked the silica mine 10 miles east and drank quietly at home. The diner was called the Coyote. It had a long gravel lot, a faded sign with a cartoon coyote in a cowboy hat, and a patio out back with 4 wooden tables. On the afternoon this story starts, all 4 of those tables were full of men in cut-off vests. Black leather, red and white patches, sun-bleached jeans. Some had silver in their beards. Some had ink crawling out from under their collars. They were not loud. They were eating. They had ridden in from the coast that morning on a charity run for a fallen brother, and they were 3 hours from their next stop. At the head of the longest table sat the chapter president. The rest of the patio called him boss. His real name was Dutch. He was 57 years old, built like an old refrigerator, and he ate slowly. He had a fork in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. He was halfway through a plate of eggs and country ham. He had not said more than 6 words since the food came out. The men around him spoke softly when they spoke at all. That was the rule when the president was eating. Across the highway, in a single wide trailer with a sagging porch and a brown lawn, a deputy sheriff named Hollis Crane was looking for his wife. Hollis was 31. He wore a dirty undershirt and a leather belt with the badge still clipped to it. There was a hammer on the kitchen counter where the toaster used to be. The toaster was in pieces on the floor. So was the lamp. So was the screen door. Marable had walked through that screen door an hour ago with one hand under her belly and the other hand pressed against her mouth. She had walked because she could not run. She was 7 months along. The baby kicked her every few steps as if telling her to keep going. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stay. Her husband had hit her 3 times that morning. Once in the kitchen. Once on the porch. Once on the dirt path between the porch and the road. The 3rd time he had used the hammer. Not the head of it. The handle. Across her cheek. She had felt something pop. She had heard him laugh. She had walked along the shoulder of the highway with one shoe on and one shoe gone. She had passed the gas station and the sheriff's office. She had not gone into the sheriff's office. Hollis Crane was a deputy. The sheriff was his uncle. The other deputy was his cousin. The 3rd man in that building was a clerk who owed the sheriff a debt. Marable had learned that the hard way the last time she tried. She had kept walking. Her belly led her. She did not know why she crossed the gravel lot of the Coyote Diner. She told someone later that she had heard the motorcycles from the trailer 2 miles back, that something in the low rumble had felt like a hand reaching down to her. She told someone else that she had seen the black vests through the chain link and felt her knees give out before her mind caught up. Both might be true. Both might be the same thing. She crossed the gravel. She passed a waitress carrying 2 iced teas. The waitress froze with the teas in her hands and her mouth open. Marable did not see her. Marable saw only the heaviest man in the row of vests, the one at the head of the table, the one with the gray beard and the slow fork. She walked until she could not walk anymore. Then she went down on her knees. The whole patio went quiet. The fork stopped on its way to Dutch's mouth. He set it down on the plate without a sound. He did not stand. He did not lean back. He turned his head slowly toward the small, bruised woman on the gravel, a foot from his boot. The other 12 men at the tables did not move. They watched him watch her. Marable lifted her chin. Her one good eye filled. Her lips moved before her voice did. When the voice finally came out, it was a whisper. She said, "Please." She said her name. She said her husband would kill her tonight. She said the police would not help. She said she had nowhere to go, and she had a baby coming, and she had heard somewhere that men like him sometimes helped women like her. She said she would understand if he sent her away. She said she would walk back to the highway. She said she was sorry for interrupting his lunch. Dutch did not answer right away. He looked at her face. He looked at her belly. He looked at the gravel under her knees. Then he looked back at her face. He reached out with one scarred hand. He did not touch her. He just held the hand out, palm up near her shoulder. He held it there, like he was waiting for her to be ready. She lowered her forehead onto that scarred palm, and she cried for the first time. Now here's the thing. Not one of those 12 men moved a muscle. They just watched their president hold up a woman with the back of his hand. Dutch nodded once. Just once. That one nod sent the man on his left out of his chair. That man walked into the diner and came back out with a clean towel and a glass of cold water. The man on Dutch's right stood up and walked to the highway and looked toward the trailer across the road. He stood there with his arms crossed, and he did not move until Dutch waved him back. 2 other men slid their plates aside and made room at the end of the table. A vest came off a 4th man's shoulders and was laid across Marable's back. Nobody said a word. Nobody asked her a question. Nobody asked Dutch a question. They just moved like a body that had done this before. Dutch finally spoke. His voice was lower than people expected, almost soft. He told her she could stand up now. He told her there was a chair at the table for her if she wanted it. He told her nobody at this table was going to touch her unless she asked. He told her she did not have to talk yet. He told her to drink the water first. Then eat. Then talk. In that order. She stood up on shaking legs. The vest on her back was heavier than she expected. She sat down at the end of the table. She drank half the water in one pull. Her hands were still shaking. The patio stayed silent. Boss Dutch picked his fork back up and finished his eggs. The clubhouse sat 8 miles north of the diner, off a side road, behind a gate with no sign. It was a low cinder block building, painted the color of dust. There was a steel door at the front and a steel door at the back. There were 3 pickup trucks and a long row of bikes inside the fence. There were 2 old dogs sleeping on the porch. There was a woman in her 50s sweeping the porch when the column of motorcycles rolled in. Her name was Connie. She had been Dutch's wife for 31 years. She stopped sweeping when she saw the small, bruised woman riding in the cab of the lead pickup with her husband at the wheel. Connie did not ask any questions either. She just opened the door and held it. Marable walked in under the vest that was still around her shoulders. The clubhouse smelled like coffee and old leather and something baking. There was a long wooden table running down the center of the main room. There were photographs on the walls. There was a small kitchen at the back where a pot of chili was simmering. Connie steered Marable to a chair at the long table. She put a bowl of chili in front of her. She put a mug of weak coffee next to the chili. She sat down across from Marable and waited. Marable ate the chili. She had not eaten since the day before. She ate slowly at first. Then she ate fast. Connie did not watch her eat. Connie picked up a brush and a thin elastic and asked, in a quiet voice, if she could braid Marable's hair while she ate. Marable nodded. The brush worked through the tangles gently. The chapters started to filter in from the porch. Men hung their vests on pegs by the door. They walked past the table without staring. They went to the kitchen for coffee. They sat at smaller side tables and started talking about the next stop on the charity ride. Somebody put a country song on low. Boss Dutch sat down at the head of the long table, 2 seats from Marable. He did not look at her belly anymore. He looked at his coffee. He let her finish her chili. He let Connie finish the braid. He let her breathe. Then, when she finally set the spoon down and pushed the bowl away, he asked her one question. He asked her to tell him about her husband. Not what her husband had done. Who her husband was. Where her husband worked. Who her husband answered to. She told him. She told him the deputy's name. She told him the sheriff was the deputy's uncle. She told him about the other deputy who was a cousin. She told him about a back room at the gas station where men she did not know came in and went out at strange hours. She told him about the plastic baggies she had found in the laundry. She told him about the new pickup truck on a deputy's pay. She told him about the night her husband had come home with a black duffel bag and put it under their bed, and told her that if she ever opened it, he would bury her in the desert. She had never opened it. She told Dutch she still did not know what was in it. She suspected. Dutch listened without moving. The chapter at the smaller tables had gone quiet again. Even the country song felt far away. When Marable finished talking, Dutch was quiet for almost a full minute. Then he said one sentence. He said, "You are safe tonight." He said it like a fact, not like a promise. Then he stood up and walked outside. The screen door clicked shut behind him. Through the window, Marable saw him cross the lot to a smaller building. 3 of the older men followed him. The door of the smaller building closed. The patio was empty. The chili was finished. The braid was finished. Connie smiled at her, a small, tired smile, and pushed a glass of water across the table. Marable sipped it. The baby kicked once hard and then went still. The clubhouse was warm. The light through the window had turned gold. For one stretched moment, everything felt almost ordinary. The men in the back room talked quietly behind the closed door. Connie hummed an old hymn under her breath. A second bowl of chili appeared at Marable's elbow as if by magic. She did not remember the last time anyone had been kind to her without wanting something back. She closed her eyes. She rested both hands on her belly. She breathed. Headlights swept across the front window. A truck door slammed in the gravel lot. A pump-action shotgun racked in the dark. Marable's eyes opened. Connie was already on her feet. 2 of the younger men in the room were already moving toward the door without a word. From the back room, Dutch and the 3 older men came out walking, not running, sliding their vests back on as they came. The country song had been killed. The clubhouse was silent, except for the slow, steady steps of men who had walked toward a shotgun before. Outside in the gravel lot, Deputy Holly's crane was standing in front of his pickup truck with a sawed-off pump shotgun braced against his hip. His undershirt was still on. His badge was still clipped to his belt. His eyes were red. He was yelling Marable's name into the night. He was yelling that she was his wife, and she belonged to him, and that any one of those leather-wearing degenerates who tried to hide her was going to bleed for it. He was alone. He was drunk. He was also a sworn officer of the law in a county where the sheriff was his uncle and the other deputy was his cousin. He thought that made him bulletproof. Dutch opened the steel front door. He stepped out onto the porch. He did not have a weapon in his hands. None of the men behind him had weapons in their hands either. They came out in a line. They spread across the porch in a loose half circle. Then they came down off the porch and walked into the gravel. 12 men. No guns. They stopped about 20 feet from Holly's crane and his shotgun. They made a wall. Their bodies were the wall. Holly swung the shotgun across the line. He was screaming now. He told them to send her out. He told them he would shoot the first man who stepped forward. Dutch did not step forward. Dutch just stood at the center of the wall with his hands at his sides. He spoke to the deputy by his first name. He said, "Hollies." He said it twice. He said, "Hollies, look at us." Hollies looked. He saw 12 men who were not afraid of his shotgun. He saw their eyes. He saw their patches. He saw the porch behind them, where a pregnant woman was now standing with her hand on the door frame. Dutch did not raise his voice. He said, "The shotgun goes down or it goes off. If it goes off, you hit one of us. Maybe two. The rest of us walk through the smoke and we take it from you. You don't make it to your truck. The sheriff doesn't make it to morning. You know that's true. You knew that before you came here. So put it down. Or pull the trigger. Either way, you don't leave with her." Hollis Crane was a small man holding a big gun in front of 12 men who had walked toward bigger guns. His arms started to shake. His eyes flicked once to the porch. Marable was looking at him. She was not crying. She was not begging anymore. She was looking at him like she was already on the other side of his life. He felt it. He felt the weight of every choice he had ever made resting on the barrel of that shotgun. He lowered the gun. He did not put it on the ground. He just let it hang at his side. 2 of the bikers walked forward slowly and took it out of his hands. Another biker walked behind him and took the keys to the pickup. Dutch walked up to Hollis Crane. He stood close enough that the deputy had to tilt his chin up to keep eye contact. Dutch said 3 sentences in that low, controlled voice. He said, "You will never come to this gate again." He said, "You will never touch her again." He said, "Tomorrow morning, you and your uncle are going to have a very long conversation with some people who are tired of you." Then he stepped back. He told the deputy to walk home. The truck stayed. The shotgun stayed. The man walked. That conversation happened the next morning. But the work that made the conversation possible happened during the long, quiet stretch between midnight and 4 a.m. 3 of the older Patches had ridden out of the clubhouse on dark bikes with the headlights off until they hit the county road. They had gone to the trailer. They had not broken anything. They had used a spare key Marable had given them off her own ring. They had pulled the black duffel bag from under the bed. They had taken 3 photographs of the back room of the gas station through a side window with a small camera one of the brothers had carried since his days in the Navy. They had pulled a stack of envelopes from a drawer in the kitchen that even Marable had not known about. They had put it all in 2 bankers' boxes and ridden back. Nobody had fired a shot. Nobody had been seen. By dawn, the boxes were sitting on the long wooden table in the clubhouse, and Dutch had read every page in them twice. Boss Dutch and 4 older Patches walked into the sheriff's office at 8 a.m. with the 2 bankers' boxes under their arms and a small recorder in Dutch's shirt pocket. The boxes were full of photographs, photocopies of shipment logs from a warehouse 2 counties over, and the contents of that one black duffel bag. The sheriff was sitting behind his desk with a cup of coffee. The other deputy, the cousin, was at the front. Hollis Crane was in a holding cell sleeping off the night. Dutch did not raise his voice once. He sat down across from the sheriff. He pushed 1 box across the desk. He said, "You have until 5 o'clock today to call the state police yourself." He said, "If you do, the boxes shrink." He said, "Your nephew goes down alone." He said, "You keep your pension, and you keep your wife from finding out about the other things in the second box." He said, "If 5 o'clock comes and goes, the second box goes to the state. The federal task force we already spoke to gets a phone call, and a copy of one particular tape goes to your mother-in-law." He said it like a man reading a weather report. The sheriff did not drink any more of his coffee. "If you've made it this far with me, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button. It tells me you want the rest of these stories about the people the world stepped over. There are more coming. Now back to Marable. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, the sheriff had called the state police himself. By 7 o'clock, there were 3 state cruisers in the gravel lot of the Coyote Diner, and a federal vehicle parked behind them. By 9 o'clock, Deputy Hollis Crane had been transferred out of his uncle's holding cell into state custody. By midnight, the sheriff had handed in his badge and was sitting in his own kitchen with a glass of bourbon he could not finish. The second deputy, the cousin, was already on a plane out of state, but they would find him 2 weeks later in a motel in Reno. The meth pipeline that had run quietly through that little town for 6 years went dark in one night. Marable stayed at the clubhouse. Connie set her up in a small room at the back that had a single bed, a window that looked out at the dogs on the porch, and a quilt that smelled like cedar. There was a glass of water on the nightstand. There was a small lamp with a yellow shade. There was a wooden chair in the corner with a folded blanket on it in case the night turned cold. Connie had put a pair of clean socks at the foot of the bed because she had noticed Marable only had one shoe and her feet were dirty. Marable sat on the edge of the bed and looked at those socks for a long time before she picked them up. Then she slept for 14 hours the first night. When she woke up, there was a glass of orange juice on the table by the bed and a soft cotton dress, plain and clean, folded on the chair. She put it on. It fit. She walked out into the main room. The chapter was sitting around the long table eating pancakes. They did not stop talking when she walked in. They did not stand up. They did not stare. One of the younger ones slid a plate of pancakes in front of an empty chair next to Connie. Connie patted the chair. Marable sat down. She ate slowly. The bruise on her cheek had darkened overnight. The eye was still half closed, but her hand was steady when she lifted the fork. A doctor came that afternoon. Not a hospital. A doctor. He was an older man in a faded button-down shirt who had ridden in with the chapter from the coast on the charity run. He had been a trauma surgeon in the Navy a long time ago. He examined Marable in the small back room. He listened to the baby's heart. He looked at her cheek. He set a hairline fracture in the bone under her eye with 2 of his fingers and a strip of medical tape. He told her the baby was healthy. He told her she needed to drink more water. He told her she needed to sleep. He told her she would be all right. He said it like Dutch said things. Like a fact. The trial came 3 months later. By then Marable was 9 months along. Her belly was huge under the same plain cotton dress, this time washed and ironed by Connie. Her face had healed. The bone had set straight. Her hair was clean and braided. She stood on the steps of the county courthouse with a small overnight bag in one hand. Boss Dutch was on her right. Connie was on her left. 6 older members of the chapter were behind them. None of them wore their vests. They wore plain shirts and jeans and clean boots. They had agreed on that the night before. This was her day. Not theirs. The courtroom was small and full. The reporters had come from 2 cities away. The prosecutor was a young woman with a thin folder and a steady voice. She called Marable to the stand on the second morning. Marable walked up slowly because of the belly. Dutch did not look at her as she passed. He looked at the deputy at the defense table. The deputy did not look back. The deputy looked at the floor. Marable sat down in the witness chair. She put one hand on her belly. She put the other on the rail. She told the story the way she had told it at the clubhouse table over the bowl of chili. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. The jury watched her hand on her belly the whole time. By the time she stepped down, 2 of them were wiping their eyes. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. Hollis Crane was found guilty on every count. Aggravated assault, domestic battery, possession with intent, conspiracy to distribute, witness tampering, misuse of a sworn office. He was led out of the courtroom in cuffs through the same side door he had walked through 100 times as a deputy. He did not look at Marable. He did not look at anyone. Marable watched him go. Her hand stayed on her belly. Her face did not change. When the cuffs clicked closed, she let out a single long breath she had been holding for 2 years. The baby came 4 days later. He came at 4 in the morning in a county hospital ward with a fluorescent light buzzing over the bed, and a nurse holding Maribel's hand and Connie on the other side wiping her forehead with a damp cloth. Boss Dutch was in the waiting room down the hall with 3 other older patches. They were drinking machine coffee out of paper cups. When the nurse came out and said it was a boy, Dutch nodded once. The same single nod he had given on the patio of the Coyote Diner. Then he sat back down and finished his coffee. Maribel named the boy Dutch. Dutch Michael, after Connie's older brother who had died in a war a long time ago. She wrote the name on the birth certificate herself with a steady hand. She did not give the boy his father's last name. She gave him her maiden name. Connie cried when she saw it. Dutch did not cry. Dutch looked at the small wrapped thing in Maribel's arms for a long time without speaking. Then he reached down and laid one scarred finger across the baby's forehead, the way a priest might do a blessing. He did not say anything when he did it. He did not need to. Spring came late that year. The desert turned green for a few short weeks. Behind the clubhouse, in a small patch of dirt that had never grown anything but weeds, Maribel knelt down on the ground one morning in May with a small spade in her hand and started to dig. She was planting tomatoes. Connie was at the back porch shelling peas. The baby was sleeping in a basket on a folding chair in the shade. 2 of the dogs lay near the basket. From inside the clubhouse came the low sound of men talking over coffee and a country song playing on the radio. Maribel dug a row of small holes. She dropped a seedling into each one. She covered them with both hands. Her hands were dirty. Her nails were short. The thin gold band was gone. There was no ring on that finger anymore. She sat back on her heels and looked at the row she had made. She was on her knees on the dirt again. But this time she had put herself there. This time the man inside the clubhouse with the gray beard was someone she had chosen. This time the baby in the basket was hers and only hers. This time the gravel under her knees did not hurt. She heard the screen door click open behind her. She did not turn around. She knew the slow, heavy step. Boss Dutch walked across the yard with a fresh mug of coffee in one hand and a smaller mug in the other. He set the smaller mug down on the dirt next to her without a word. Then he walked over to the basket. He bent down. He looked at the baby for a long moment. He laid one scarred finger on the baby's forehead again. He stood up. He walked back into the clubhouse. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Maribel picked up the small mug. The coffee was warm. She held it in both dirty hands. She looked out across the desert toward the highway in the distance. A line of motorcycles was rolling north on the 2-lane road, very small and very far away. She could not tell if they were the chapter or strangers. It did not matter. She lifted the mug to her lips and she drank. The coffee was strong and a little bitter, and exactly the way she had learned to like it in this house. Behind her the screen door clicked again. Connie was bringing the baby out into the sun. The dogs lifted their heads. Somewhere out on the highway, one of the motorcycles in the small, distant line gave a single short blast of its horn, the way a man tips his hat. Maribel smiled for the first time in 2 years. She set the mug down in the dirt. She picked up the spade. She went back to planting her garden.